It's the most controversial play in the history of the game.
Bonehead Merkle. It's almost like it's someone who is a numbskull.
Well before Steve Bartman and well before Bill Buckner, there was Fred Merkle.
Everyone knows about the Billy Goat, but Fred Merkle, I think for most Cub fans, is sort of lost in history.
I think it's time the records are set straight and people do realize the truth behind Fred Merkle, that he was anything but a bonehead.
September 23rd, 1908, Cubs against the Giants. 2 weeks left in the season, was a classic pennant race. Giants had a one-game lead and the Cubs were giving chase.
September 23rd, 1908 will forever be known as Merkle's boner. The only reason he was playing was the Giants' regular first baseman, Fred Tenney, had lumbago. It was the only game all year that Merkle started at first base.
With the score tied at 1 in the bottom of the 9th, Fred Merkle had his date with destiny. Cubs historian Ed Hartig.
The Giants had a runner on first and third. It was Merkle on first, Moose McCormick on third. Al Bridwell hit a base hit up the middle that was to score the apparent game-winning run. While Moose McCormick goes from third, crosses home, game's over.
The Giants appeared to have beaten the Cubs 2-1 and were one step closer to the pennant. But instead, across the diamond, fate intervened.
Fred Merkle, rather than completing his run from first to second, sees Moose McCormick cross home plate, so he stops, turns, and he starts running towards the center field. That's where the Giants' clubhouse was. As McCormick crosses the plate, the Giants fans swarm the field, and Merkle, like his teammates, to avoid the crowd, took off for the clubhouse. Well, Merkle never touched second base, which meant the force was still on.
Thinking the game was over, thousands of fans rushed the field and headed towards the one exit in center. Author Jerry Jacover.
This was tradition, custom, and you didn't have to touch second base to save your hide, so to speak, from the melee that resulted when the fans stormed the field.
But the Cubs thought differently and frantically went searching for the baseball, which was said to be thrown into the stands by the Giants' Joe McGinty. Cubs players went racing after it.
They find the guy who has the ball. Give us the ball, give us the ball. Well, the guy won't give them the ball, so they tackle him, and then Crow pulls the guy's hat down over the guy's face so he can't see. The guy finally drops the ball. The Cub players grab it. They throw it into Joe Tinker, who fires it to Evers. Evers steps on second. He yells for the umpire. The umpire says, "You're right. Merkle's out."
Umpire Hank O'Day called Merkle out and then ruled the game a 1-1 tie. And the next day, Fred Merkle was vilified in the press for his base-running gaffe. The New York Times famously calling the Merkle mistake a bonehead play.
His teammates did not blame him, but the fans and the newspapers and the magazines were vicious.
They inferred that he was stupid for doing this, when, as we know, this is what most any player would have done.
Tim Wiles is the director of research at the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York.
He was also not stupid. He's described as a voracious reader, well-traveled, a gentleman, a good conversationalist. Chief Myers called him the smartest man on the ball club. So it must have been hard for him because he's not stupid and he's not a bonehead, okay? But everywhere he went, for the rest of his life, this is how he was introduced.
At the end of the regular season, the Cubs and Giants finished tied for first, thanks to the Merkle game. And National League President Harry Pulliam ruled that the two teams would meet in a one-game playoff to decide who went to the World Series. And in front of an estimated 250,000 fans, both inside and outside the Polo Grounds, the Cubs beat the Giants 4-2 and later won the World Series, their last World Series. And Giants fans would not let Merkle forget about his historic blunder for decades.
Merkle would talk about going up to the plate and striking out and walking back, and you hear the boos. And forever the phrase boner or bonehead and Merkle were used simultaneously.
Pulling a Merkle, the word Merkle became almost a verb. I Merkled, he Merkled.
He stated that he was afraid someday somebody may write bonehead on his grave. So that shows he did take it to his grave.